So let's start with an overview of what the nervous system is. So we've got the nervous system, and the breakdown, as we know, is we've got the PNS and the CNS. And we know that the PNS from the previous videos is broken down into the autonomic nervous system as well as the somatic nervous system. And really the autonomic nervous system is our involuntary nervous system, while our somatic nervous system is the voluntary nervous system. And what that means is the autonomic nervous system is going to take information from the internal receptors and it's going to send out information to the smooth muscle and glands, while the somatic nervous system is going to take information from the sensory nervous system, sensory organs, and it's going to send output to the skeletal muscles. So if you want to have a quick way to remember this, it's S and S. So the first S is the sensory, the second S is the skeletal. And then from there we have the autonomic nervous system branching out into, as we know it, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And the sympathetic, of course, is your fight or flight. The main neurotransmitter is noradrenaline, and this is the adrenergic system, while the parasympathetic is rest and relax, and the main neurotransmitter is acetylcholine and the cholinergic system. Now these two systems right here in the physiology videos we're going to go through and kind of break down what's happening. Now if we make our way down to the central nervous system, we've got the brain and we've got the spinal cord. And in previous videos we went more in depth into the spinal cord. The brain itself is broken down into the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain has two components: the telencephalon and the thalamus. No, sorry, the diencephalon. And the telencephalon that we have here, this is going to break down into this is the area of the cerebral cortex, the basal ganglion, the hippocampus, and the amygdala. The diencephalon is the thalamus and the hypothalamus. And the midbrain, since it starts with an M, it's going to be the mesencephalon. And this is the tectum and cerebellum. The hindbrain is going to be what's left, and that's the metencephalon, as well as the myencephalon. And the metencephalon, it includes the pons and the cerebellum, and the myencephalon includes the medulla. So those are the parts of the brain and the nervous system, and all very important to know. Now, if we look specifically at the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system versus the parasympathetic. And we know already that these are going to originate from the autonomic nervous system, and we know that the sympathetic is fight or flight, parasympathetic is rest and relax, and this is adrenergic, the adrenergic system versus the cholinergic system. And now the new things, or kind of the add-ons to that, is where they originate from. So the origination So for the sympathetic, it's going to be around the T1, L2, and this is the thoracolumbar system, while the cholinergic is in the range of the S2 to 4, and that's the craniosacral system. And basically, what other thing that you have to know about the autonomic nervous system is the autonomic nervous system is going to use two neurons and synapses to attain the peripheral target. So what that basically means is we're going to have an origin, and then we're going to go to the central nervous system. But along the way, it has to reach the pre-ganglion. So there are a couple paths that you can take to be able to have a sympathetic response. So for a sympathetic response, if we were to kind of look back at what we've drawn a couple times over, we have our spinal cord that we've segmented off, and as we already know where the ventral horn and the dorsal horn are, we can now look at how, excuse that was not supposed to be there. We can now look at how, or I should say what's going on in terms of a synapse. So there are three pathways that we can actually take for a synapse to occur, and these three pathways are going to lead to synapses in different parts of the body, dependent on what's the need at the time. So depending on what the need is, the body is going to make the right choice and to say, okay, I have to have a synapse for this process. So if we look at what I've drawn here, we've got a couple things to label. And so as we get to them, we'll kind of label them along the way. And sorry for like halfway through changing how I'm drawing this. So our first thing is basically you know that pre-ganglionic fibers are going to arise only from intermedial lateral cell column at the T1 to L2 levels. So we know that this is sympathetic automatically because it's T1 to L2. And it's going to pass through the corresponding ventral roots to each spinal nerve. So if we're looking at the first possible route, what that means is the first route is where we're going to go from T1 to L2, right? And then from there it's going to go down the ventral root. It's going to pass through the white ramus, go down the pre-ganglionic fibers, reach the sympathetic chain ganglion, go to the post-ganglionic, reach the vessels plus sweat gland. And this is going to ultimately signal to increase blood flow. So now let's think about what that means. So basically we're going down the T1 to L2 level, down the ventral fibers, or the ventral root, into the white ramus, and then right now we have our pre-ganglionic. As it continues to pass down, we're making our way down our route, our sympathetic chain, into the post-ganglionic, and then from there we can imagine this is going to continue going down into the vessels and sweat glands. So in terms of where other landmarks, so right here, this is going to be the white ramus. Right here is the gray ramus. And the sympathetic ganglion is this area right here. So if we think about that story again, or the path I should say, so we have T1, T2. It's going down the ventral root, it hits the pre-ganglion. From there, it's going to go down into the sympathetic chain, and it's going to go into the post-ganglion, and then make its way out. Sorry, going down that way. And that's basically what happens. So the dorsal ramus, it's going to impart on the back muscles and the skin. The ventral ramus, it's going to control the intercostal nerves and the brachial plexus. And then we have the GSE versus the GSA, which we mentioned before. And the GSE, know that it's the tongue and it controls the eye. It's going to come out of the ventral ramus, while the GSA is the body wall and the skeletal muscles. And it's going to receive information from the skin and proprioception of the back. So basically you're feeling in your back. Now the second path that we can take is another route, and it's going to be a little bit different than the last one. So now the new areas we have to consider, these areas right here, they're a part of the splanchnic nerve. And then right here, this last part, this is our pre-aortic ganglion. And so now what's going to happen in this area is we are going to go down the sympathetic chain, but the key is we're not going to synapse. Unlike before, in the first route we did synapse. It's going to go down the post-ganglionic chain into the gray ramus, and then from there it's going to go into the spinal nerve, and it's going to target our organs, our glands, our blood vessels, and our smooth muscles. Now remember, the gray ramus is going to be postsynaptic. The white is going to be presynaptic. So as we're going down, we know that our white is going to be our presynaptic, our gray is going to be our postsynaptic. So if you remember in the first step, we basically went down, reached into the sympathetic ganglion, came back out, had our synapse, and had our process. Now in this case, we're coming down, and we're skipping the pre, and we're going down the post, so we're not having to worry about a synapse. And then we're going to go down the gray ramus, as we know the gray is the post, and we're going to target our spinal cord. Now in our third possible path, now since we have mentioned the splanchnic nerve, splanchnic of course is going to be anything to do with our viscera, what's going to happen is we're also not going to have synapse, so that automatically means we're going down the post and not the pre-ganglionic. So we've got the sympathetic chain, it goes down through the splanchnic nerves down this way, and they're going to arise from the ganglionic chain around 5 to 9. So we have 3 different things that we need to know. Based off of where this is going to arise, in terms of the splanchnic nerve, we have 3 different things that can happen. So for the splanchnic nerve, if we're going down the chain in the regions of 5 through 9, this is known as the greater splanchnic. If it's going from 10 to 11, it's the lesser, and 12 is the least. And these are all going to be visceral targets. Or sorry, I should say the viscera is going to be the targets. So they're all going to hit some sort of organ system, but depending on their region, they're known as the greater, the less, or the least. And that's kind of a name that you should just commit to memory based on the location. So if you have any questions, comments, leave them below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel.